Before we talk about the modern technique of slinging, I want to go into a little bit of the background and history of slinging. So this is a sling. This is the thing that David used against Goliath in the Old Testament. Samuel, as the story goes, the Philistines and the Israelis were battling, and every day for 40 days, the champion of the Philistine army, Goliath, this giant warrior, came and challenged the Israelis to single combat. This is a tradition in the old days. You might have seen this in the movie Troy with Brad Pitt. And so for 40 days, he issued this challenge for the Israeli champion to come forward, and it wasn't till a slender shepherd boy named David stepped up to the plate and said, okay, I'll take it on, that we see what happens next. So David, using 5 smooth stones and his shepherd's sling like this, was able to fell the giant Goliath with a stone to his head, knocked him down, and eventually killed him. The Israelis win, and the rest is biblical history. We've also been talking throughout these lessons of transforming our swing from an arm-driven and arm-led action only, where the body remains stable or unused really, and recognizing, especially last week when we saw the pictures of Pete Sampras's sort of uncertain swing, and we see the arc of the swing is all distorted. There's all kinds of manipulations through the path. It's almost impossible to make good contact that way at high speeds, versus a Rafael Nadal slinging action where the arc of the swing is so stable, so smooth. Just by the visuals, you can see which is going to be the more consistent way to make contact. It's going to be this free swinging arcing motion that we want to go through, not a unsteady hand-driven motion. And that motion is driven by our body and anchored by the 2 swing centers in our lower pelvis and in our chest. So we're not moving that point of contact around, extending out or pulling back, so that we have to make last-minute manipulations. So we've talked about that issue, and we continue with that theme of a body-led and body-driven swing, something that most players don't do, which is as they take it back and they drop into this slotted area, they tend to short circuit the loading. If we have time, we don't always have time to do this, but if we have time, this racket should be wound, and the arm and wrist and forearm should be wound back so that the racket points to the back side fence. So most players, because they've been brainwashed with a unit turn mentality, just think that this is the take back. They just turn their body as one unit, and then they just drop the racket to the side. There's a real no loading in the hitting arm and back area. So if we use the momentum of this turn back with our body, the momentum of this turn as the racket follows our hands and we get to the pivot point back here, the centrifugal force going out as we bring this down sends the head of the racket back that way that we want, and loads the wrist and forearm the way we want. So it looks something like this. So we move up, and then as we come down and side bend, we feel the pull of the water back here, and we let that pull happen. And that, see, my arm is nice and coiled here in the slot just by letting the momentum of our swing place us in there. So again, as we're using the forces of nature, the centrifugal force of this ball now, but we can feel that because it's heavier, but we want to do the same thing with the racket. And so we want to feel, as we make the handbrake and coil back here, that we feel the momentum of this racket is swinging back. And it's pulling on our hand if we let it. And we feel it. And we just let it go. And now this arm is all wound back the way we wanted it in the slot, fully loaded. So that's another motion that we'll get into our practice session and focus on. But now we're coming to the movement forward from the slot. And because we've done this side bend, now you can see how as I side bend, even now in slow motion, I've made this little transition move, this little bump forward with my hip, and the weight has started to shift to my inside of my lead foot. This is going to be the braking mechanism for the hips as they unwind, is we have to get the weight early into our lead side for this throwing action. And so that's another small circle learning feature that we'll focus on in practice, but I'm giving you the movement map now, is that in addition to dropping, side bending, and down into the slot and winding the racket back, we have this lateral bump. Now we're going to be on a rotational path, not a linear path, so that bump is sort of going in that path of our hips are going to turn. Remember, we had the drill last week about the hips staying back and pivoting around the chair. So our extension or the hip bump is not to the, if I were doing a linear stroke like this out here, but we're still on the rotating path, so the hip bump is to the left. Now, do we always see it and do we always feel it? No, because we don't necessarily have time to do this complete swing all the time. It varies, almost every swing. But we're always building the ideal, most powerful, efficient swing that we can for any given moment. So we have to build the model for the completely powered swing into our mentality and into our muscle memory. So getting this bump, lateral bump, we're only shifting around the circle path an inch or two forward like this, but this is putting pressure into the ground and getting our weight starting to shift. And it also recenters us as we drop. We're coming from a position where maybe 70% of our weight is on our trail leg. And we don't want to be having to generate our swing with all the weight on our back. We want this weight then to be recentered as we sink into this position. And so this lateral shift gives us this recentering, sinking move. And now from this recentered position, now we have gathered all of our energy for the most powerful swing or sling that we can do. So we'll practice the lateral bump in the deliberate practice session. So then we talked about how the first move out of the slot is the master move, where we're not trying to lead or push the handle towards the target right away, which so many people recommend. As you can see, as I do this right away, the racket head is traveling out on the swing circle, and pretty soon it's lined up with our hands, all the issues that entails. So with a pulling action and the center mass of the racket following the pulling action, you remember that lesson. So as we pull out of the slot out to the right, so that's second base. If we were a batter, then we're pulling out towards more the second baseman between first and second base. Not exactly 90 degrees, no, but more or less a 45 kind of ish angle. Out to the right for the first fractions of a second as the racket head lines up behind our hand. And then as we move out to the turn of the swing, that's when the hips have started to decelerate and almost stopped. And now the torso is starting to accelerate up and through, and we'll eventually get to where the non-hitting side is freezing or blocking that movement so that our hitting side then can accelerate through. That's sort of the mechanics of it. So from the slot, we're gonna drive out to the right with the handle, and you can see that the head basically stays behind my hand for this short time until I hit the turn of the swing, the pivoting of the upper torso, the stopping of the non-hitting arm, and the final release. And we get the same pulls the same transformation of torquing energy in our body out into the torquing of the handle and eventually the racket through contact that we want. So again, this enables us to feel this motion a little bit better in our wrist and forearm. We really feel that the tug and the twisting actions of our body being transmitted to the racket much more easily with the rope bat. Now, just for the heck of it, I'm gonna never practice this, see if I can hit a ball on a tee towards the target using the rope bat and see what happens. We'll see if this swinging motion produces the target direction and other things that we might want, although we can't. So it might look like this. And you can see that it flew to the right of the target. So in practice, I would know that I'm not really haven't completed the rotation of this upper part of my swing, and my swing is coming in too late. So now we would tee up another one and see if we can fix that. See if I can get my rotation working and the pulling of my non-hitting side through a little bit better so that the racket head is coming through better squaring to target than it did that last time. So semi-open stance, athletic posture. I'm going to go and drop it to the slot, spiraling motion. And you can see it went just left of the target, went kind of low, which again shows me that my path through contact there wasn't enough vertical path through it. So the next time I'm going to work on lifting it, not lifting it consciously, but maneuvering my body so that there's more vertical path through contact. And now we're like David, except we're going to use a tennis ball instead of a stone. We're going to see if we can execute a shepherd swing. So the way this sling works is that there's one cord that has a little finger loop that goes around your index finger, and another sort of knotted cord at the end that you hold in the tips of your fingers. And this is what we're going to release at the right moment so that this flap opens and the ball goes towards the target. That's the idea. Again, I haven't practiced this very much. Let's see if it comes anywhere towards any target. Something like that action.